Are you ready to go? Okay. Thank you for your patience. We're just having some audio issues.
Oh. You demand, Dale.
Well, hello everyone. We're still having some audio challenges, but thank you for your patience, and we will get started in just a few seconds here. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming online today, and I welcome everyone to Studio 35. And we're getting ready to start our January 26, 2021 meeting, virtual meeting of the school, regular meeting of the Board of Education for the Langley School District. And just to get started here, the board, the audio, go, ready to go? 5, okay, we're still gonna wait 5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Test mic. Can you hear? Test mic. Test mic 1, 2, 3.
All right, I think we're ready to get started. So those in attendance are informed that in policy number 7, regular and special meetings board may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board reserves at its sole discretion via motion at any meeting the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or portion of the meeting. Further, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of a meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is now 7:05, and I would like to acknowledge that the Langley School District is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yayastal, Skeka Eyes working together, and Nexamot, Notsamot, uniting ourselves with one mind, one heart, to ensure that we support and inspire all learners to reach their full potential. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here tonight, and starting off with board members. I'd like to start off with Marnie Wilson, one of our trustees, Tony Ward, trustee, David Todd, trustee, Suzanne Perot, trustee, Shelley Coburn, trustee, and I'll be your chair tonight. My name is Rod Ross. The staff that are present today, we have starting at the bottom, Gilbert Monsanto, he's our IT technical support specialist. Dale Vo, he's also an IT support specialist. And Paul Balbeo is also an IT support specialist. Then we have Judy Swanson, our executive assistant, Joanne Abshire, our communications manager, Barry Bunyan, assistant superintendent, Shin Chan, assistant secretary treasurer, Mal Gill, assistant superintendent, Woody Bradford, assistant superintendent, Brian Izelli, secretary treasurer, and of course, Gord Stewart, our superintendent. Other guests that we have with us today, we have Magdi Gobriel. He is the district principal with Wellness and Diversity, and Aya Hare is our district vice principal. Some of our partner groups that are with us tonight, Tanya Kerr is representing the LTA, and she's the president. Alicia Rempel represents DPAC and is also the president. We have a number of principals that are with us. Marcella Moino is with us, as well as Jeremy Linden and Kim Anderson, who are with LVP. PA, president and vice president, respectively. Report from in camera. The vice chair reported that the items discussed in camera tonight are pertained to, and so I think that we have the special in camera meeting of January 12th, 2021 was a personnel item. Other than that, I think it was all personnel, and it was property. And also there was some legal on there as well from in camera tonight. The consent agenda, the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda items as provided. I need someone to move the consent agenda if they would, and who would like to do that for me? Suzanne Perot. Okay, and I'm gonna just say Tony Ward. Thank you very much. Okay, so Tony and great. And the Board of Education adopts consent agenda items as provided. I need a motion. We've got a mover and a seconder for that. So can I just have a show of hands on that one? Okay. And if just so everyone is clear, I can't see everyone tonight because of the presentation. So you'll have to put your opposition in the chat if you would be so kind. All right. So I don't see any in the chat, so I'm just going to assume that is unanimous. All right. Okay, very good. So we're on to the agenda and consideration of the agenda. And before we do that, I'd like to flip 6.1 and 6.2. The superintendent has a guest, and we don't want to have this person staying too late. I'd like to get him home to his family. So, and also I'd like to add a new business. I'd like to add the BCSTA motions. The trustees have come up with a number of motions that are time sensitive, and we'd like to get those done as best as we can tonight. So if we can add those items and flip those items, that would be great. I need a mover for the agenda. Thank you, Tony. That's very kind of you to put your hand up. And Suzanne Perot, I'm going to put you down as well. Thank you. And that the agenda be be approved as presented. All those in favor for the agenda? I see those hands. Thank you, and it's carried unanimously. Again, if there's any in the chat, any opposition in the chat, please. Okay, thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report. The superintendent's report literacy results. So I'd like to have a mover for the superintendent's report. And sorry, what have I missed? We're doing that one first. Okay, superintendent literacy. Very good. I didn't even pay attention to my own. Okay, the Board of Education receives the update for the youth engagement initiatives for information as provided. So superintendent, I leave it off to you right now. So I think it's Mel Gill that's going to do that. So Mel, would you like to lead us off with that discussion? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present for the information around the at the district and all with a number of community partners taking on. First, I just want to quick thought how important this will be, and will continue to be. On August 7th, 2018, when we launched one of those very publicly. And shortly after passing, the district, along with a number of partners, responded in a way that
honored the student with a number of initiatives that we put together and continue to do that as time has gone on. So I think it's this area and the people working on this extraordinary project, not just in the district, but beyond. I think what I'll go quickly is introductions, and a background about my guest, Kirk, and I'll talk about the journey that we've been on, and then the work that we've been doing with partners as well is something that's really important. And work that I think is the work that needs to happen at this place. And not only that, well, the school perspective that we're doing as a school district over the next little while. The team of people that have been working on this certainly been a greater number than this evening. The number of folks that have been involved in this included myself, Michael Morgan, Director of Learning Support Services, Lisa Lanchberry, District Principal of Early Learning and Safe Schools, Mr. Magdi Gobriel, who you've heard about already, District Principal of Wellness and Diversity, Desire Hare, District Vice Principal of Enhanced Student Services, and our guest this evening, who is Corporal Van Herk, who he is along with our former district principal of Safe Schools, Renge Bailey, really were the two that did a lot of the original work around getting community partners working together. And we continue to try and do that work together, but certainly not enough thanks for those two individuals and the time and energy that they put in to ensure that our students are getting the support that they require in order to move to a better place as far as students feeling like they're more and more engaged in the work that they need. So without further ado, I do want to introduce Mr. Corporal Van Herk to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Good evening. Thanks for being here, and a special thank you to Mr. Stewart who bumped us up a list to get us here a little bit earlier. I'm not going to take a significant amount of time because truly the bulk of the work, the bulk of the good stuff is to come in what is actually happening now. But I do want to take us back a little bit because August 7th, 2019 shook us. It shook us to the core. It hit us really, really in an impactful way. We took it personally. We've had unfortunate, untimely deaths before. We've had unfortunate, untimely tragedies before, but this one hit home in a very impactful way. So when it hit August 7th, when we got the word, I was away on vacation and I got a text from Renge. Most of you actually know a little bit about Renge, but I need to tell you that she is a very, very special lady that has a significant heart and passion for young people. The time and effort that she put in spurred me on to just do more. We realized very quickly that we needed to do more. So huge props and kudos to Renge. Working with cops, with the police, is not an easy task. If you were in the room, you'd probably be giggling and I'd be looking around going, you're not supposed to laugh at that, it's not funny. But it's true, it's hard to deal with us. Renge had a way of cutting through and just getting to the point, but doing it in such a compassionate, easy manner that it was easy to work with. So she's one of those motivating, inspirational kind of people. So I said that I would only talk for a few minutes, and I spent more time talking about Renge because it's important for us to remember that she really did spur a lot of this conversation on. It's important to remember one of our key visions at the start of all of this, early on. August 7th, the incident happened. By the end of August, beginning of September, when school started, our superintendent, the officer in charge of Langley Detachment, called a meeting with senior managers over there, with senior managers over here at the school district. Gord welcomed us here, and we had a conversation about what was going on at the time, a brief file update. And ultimately, we came out of that meeting with our senior leadership on both sides and said that we need to do more. We had to do more, that there were gaps, that we wanted to do something, we just didn't know what to do. As police officers, we want to do. We're doers. We wanted something. Well, we got our marching orders that said we had to do something. We sat down and started to discuss things, came up with the ultimate purpose that we needed to take some form of collective action to ensure that everybody belongs. Everybody belongs. That's something that we hear a lot about, but in order to do that, we needed to create a community of care because there were definite gaps. So Renge and I sat down, we started to brainstorm and troubleshoot and figured we're not smart enough to do this ourselves. So we reached out to some key community partners, and we were overwhelmed with the response that we got, to the point where we had to sit down and try and figure out, do we even need to be at the table? We got all these important decision makers and people that were movers and shakers here. Who should be here? Well, it was overwhelming. So September 18th, we had our first meeting. By September 27th, we had a second meeting, and we realized very quickly that we were sliding down the road that we were really well intended, and we had some great ideas, but we were missing a key portion of the solution to our problem here. And that was, we hadn't actually consulted with, we hadn't actually reached out to the students, to the young people who were directly affected. So we took the bold step of setting up a youth forum, put a lot of plans in place, made sure we had the right people in the room, had the right students in the room, students that had a voice, that needed a voice. We even went so far as to make sure that certain people were not in the room. We felt that we wanted to be a safe place, so we restricted all of us police officers from being in the room. What you should know is that prior to being a youth liaison officer, I was on a covert surveillance team. So I took the opportunity and surreptitiously did attend anyway. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyways, I did attend, and the buzz that was in the room of seeing adults engaging with young people, but young people just talking, was unbelievable. Something that we'll talk forever if we could. Seeing young people, our students, actually opening up and talking about what was going on and what was missing and solutions and so on to the adults that were in was nothing like you'll ever experience. It was spectacular. So we took that and we took the information and we moved on. So I've done enough talking. I'm getting the hook from over here. We need to do better for our kids. We got our marching orders. We're trying to work. We're not there yet, but we are moving ahead. Thank you. Sorry, way longer, but that's how it goes.
Nope, thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you and all your effort. We continued the work, and again, I did get an opportunity to come to the student forum for a few minutes and just to get a sense of the passion and the energy in the room. The honesty was truly overwhelming, and certainly I'll talk a little bit about the themes that came from that meeting in a few minutes. Took that information as a team, and we were able to take that information and forge it into a second meeting. Corporal Van Herk's already indicated that we had a number of people who wanted to be a part of this opportunity, and we had a greater community forum on November the 14th, and very well attended, and we'll talk a little bit about that. From tragedy comes opportunity, and this opportunity to network with our community partners has led to certainly a fantastic opportunity, and the youth engagement project itself has certainly been that piece, that opportunity. Certainly the bigger pieces for us was the fact that we were going to be on this journey. We were going to be on this journey for a long time. And that responsibility for all of the actions that the students had provided for us couldn't be dealt with on our own. It needed to be a community responsibility. And our next steps, we'll talk about it a little bit around what the community is going to need to do and what the district is willing to do as well, and what the district already has done. And Mr. Gabriel will talk about that in a few minutes. Again, ensuring that what we do together is way better than what we can do alone, because we all bring different things to the table. And I know that over the years, we've had a number of our services within our community work really hard at those goals of creating a community of care. There's no question in my mind that everybody was heading in the same direction. What we've been able to do better is to start to tie the threads between the services to be able to provide one single service for all. Because again, that collective action to ensure everybody belongs is something that will come from creating a community of care. And again, no greater mark on how society is doing than how we serve our youth. And that it does fall on us as adults. The youth forum was certainly something that Corporal Van Herk and Ms. Bailey spent a lot of time organizing. They were very careful about who was there and very careful about the questions that we were asking, because it was important that we get the right themes from our students. And the themes that we were able to arrive at, the students were able to arrive at through the positive conversations. Again, not things that I don't think we had thought of, but certainly things that coming from the students had so much more power. The connection to adults. When you have youth coming to us saying, we need to feel more connected to the people around us, the adults around us, the mentors, that's a powerful thing. When they're telling us that they want help, they're looking for help, they're looking for access to resources, and there's too many barriers in that way. Even though those resources exist for all of our students, we couldn't find, or they couldn't find the physical transportation to get to where those services were, or the services couldn't come to where they were. And we needed to work on that together. Mental health and substance use, certainly something, again, that as a district, we are dealing with and have dealt with for an extended period of time. But beyond that, with COVID, that's been highlighted, and certainly the effects have been multiplied. And as a district and as a community, what are we doing to support our youth in that? Our school supports. What are we doing intentionally to ensure that we're caring for our kids? What are some of the things that we're going to do? So we took these four themes, the ideas that were presented to us as adults, entrusted to us by our youth, and we took them to our greater community forum. And as you can tell, we had a large community forum with 32 different organizations and political folks invited, and all of them engaged in a fantastic evening of discussion. All of them looking to direct their energies to support students in each of those specific areas. Now, great to have the conversation once, but to actually do the work, to walk the journey, to continue to try and do the work that needs to be done on a daily basis takes way more time, way more energy, and that work has to be done at the smaller committee level. And that work certainly is something that we continue to work on, and it's some of that work is being carried on right now through the work of Aya Hare, our vice principal, and she is going to join us next. Aya, are you there?
I am. Hi, Mal. So, hello everyone, my name is Aya Hare. I'm a district principal, but I'm also a mom of a 3-year-old and I'm at home right now, so I really apologize because they're upstairs having a bath and I never realized how loud it was going to be. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a path. Does somebody have their microphone on? If you do, maybe turn it off. I'm going to take you down a little path so that you can understand how I got into this position and the work that I've been doing over the last little while. So as originally hired to the school district, I was hired to be district principal that advocated for children in care and help develop more of a process, because we know that they're very often children in care, youth in care, are most barriered youth. And then as Craig mentioned earlier, when Rangi asked you to do something, you do it. And she tapped me on the shoulder to be part of these discussions with youth and community back in December. And then COVID kind of hit us and took over our world. the Ministry of Education tasked our district, as well as the districts around the province, with meeting the needs of our most vulnerable students and families. And I was asked to help lead that work. So there's two things that I focused on, or that my teams focused on. First was making sure that we had vulnerable student support teams set up at every school in our district, and that the family of schools met regularly so that we could have a flow of information back and forth of what was really needed. And out of that work as well, it became really clear that we needed to connect our system with the other community partners and really build that capacity within our system, so we knew how to connect people with the different resources they needed in a timely manner. And so that led to creating, or myself co-creating with, and I'll go into that a little bit more later, the Langley Interagency Network. And then in September, when Rangi Bailey left the district, and you know that we're all very sad to hear, that, I was asked to join that team, and so I feel very fortunate to work with all these folk and continue on with the work with the Youth Engagement Project. So that explains why I'm here today, and I'm going to go through a little about each one because that I just explained, because that will lead us down and it'll give you a better idea of the partners who we're working with and the different projects that we've started or that we're looking forward to continuing on developing. I think though, just before I finish on this part, I just want to say that as a system and as a community, COVID really shook us up and forced us to change the way that we work together. And there's been opportunities and there's been a lot of challenges, but I don't think we're ever going to go back completely to the way we did things before. And in some ways that might be good, and I'll explain that a little bit later. And I see my job right now as being more of a person to help connect the dots between systems. So I think I was told I could control my PowerPoint, but I cannot. So I just need to go to the next one back. It went a little bit too far. Oh, maybe I am doing it. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to explain really quickly my children in care work. So as an advocacy position, creating systems within and structures within our system, and then outside and developing that, so we were able to track and advocate for kids. Key partners in that work were the Ministry of Child and Family Development, Meath, and the Representative for Children and Youth, who really maintain my anchor agencies moving forward into the continuing work. Next, with the vulnerable student support teams. Is anyone able to forward my slide for me? I would be very grateful. So you just stay there. Perfect. So with the vulnerable student support team work, after the COVID-19, my portfolio became centered around creating those teams within our district. So a lot of the initial needs were food, shelter, and Wi-Fi became a huge need that was a barrier for many of our families, so they weren't able to access their education for their students, nor supports if we were all quarantined. And very, very soon after that, it was extremely evident how much of a rise there was in mental health and family supports that we really needed to look into how to support those resources for families in a different way. So please go to the next slide. So the Langley Interagency was that was morphed out of that work, and a lot of different committees and work has come out of that from the initial creation of the Langley Interagency Network. And that was intended to bring different agencies together on the Microsoft Teams platform that the district helped figure out how to have guests be able to utilize the space in meetings, posting work, having locked channels, and having a workspace. And a lot of that, out of that, I've started on different working groups, such as the Poverty Reduction Committee, the Langley Children's Committee, the Langley Action Table, Seniors Advocacy, and most recently, the Human Dignity Coalition or Committee, which I'm very excited about, and I'll hopefully have a chance to explain more about that at another day. So please go to the next slide. I really appreciate my assistant. So the main goal of the Langley Interagency Network is it's a platform to be a cross-sectional solution-based platform for community partners, businesses, and political leaders to come together and solve the gaps and problems in our community for both immediate relief as well as working together to create long-term sustainable solutions to different issues. The big bonus was just how quickly we shifted to understanding how to do everything online. And we had all levels of government in the Langleys, as well as a number of community partners and organizations that we were working with, vulnerable student support teams, as well as children in care. And then what ended up coming together too, where there's a number of businesses and philanthropists that have really helped us out. And I didn't name them all, but I wanted to highlight some. So I wonder if you can go to the next. Just gives you an idea of just, as Mel did earlier, just the magnitude of just truly amazing community partners that we have here in Langley. I was born and raised in Langley. I know how great it is here, but I was away for a long time working, and I just came back 6 years ago, and I really had no idea when my husband and I moved here to raise our family that Langley, just the breadth and amazing community partners that we have here. So I am very sorry if I've forgotten someone, because I was trying to be very careful not to. But as I said, I have not named, and that's what's missing, a lot of the business and philanthropists and just people who volunteer, which is staggering how grateful I am for these people. Okay, please go to the next slide. So I just want to go back to what Mal was talking about earlier, and keep in mind the main themes from the Youth Engagement Project work that Craig and Rengi started in our community. So that's the connection to adults, the access of resources, and mental health and substance use supports, and school supports. So connections to adults, we've talked a lot about in Langley. In the Langley School District, creating a community of care. Access to resources is interesting because it's about how to access the information, but then also how to access the resources. So we have a lot of information, and I'm very fortunate because I've been very lucky to work with some community partners, such as main community partners, such as the Langley Children's Committee and our the Family Institute and Family Smart, and Alicia from the some of our navigators for the early years, just to try to figure out how to make sure that people can access the information they need in a timely way. And school supports. So Magdie's going to, I'll introduce in a few minutes, but Magdie's going to talk a little bit more about that. So really interesting is the reoccurring topics that went through all the themes. So I was really lucky to look at all the data. There's quite a lot. So we looked at all of it, and there was just reoccurring themes pulling out of each of those topics. And one was communication. Communication isn't easy. Everybody's coming from a different angle and seeing things differently. And there just isn't a one-stop shop, or at least there hadn't been a one-stop shop where people could really access everything they want. BC 211 is fantastic, but not everybody knows how to access it or feels comfortable. Some people want the personal touch when they're really in crisis and in need. So also the community, there was an ask in different ways with different voices, but what it came down to was that youth felt like there was not an open door policy for access to supports and resources that they needed, that there was judgment, there was stigma, they literally couldn't get there, or the door wasn't open to them because of all of their complicating concurrent disorders or factors that were prevalent in their lives. And then the last is transportation, which bubbles up a lot. There's been different things tried in the Langleys, but so far there had not been a solution to, for example, the real difference between the access to transportation from Aldergrove families and downtown Langley, or if families lived in extreme poverty, they didn't have vehicles and they lived way out in sort of more rural areas of Langley, how to access services. So I'm going to talk a little, that gives you an idea of how I got here and in our work, and then I want to tie it together and talk a little bit about what's coming up next. So moving forward, there's been a few projects that have launched that are in the works in varying degrees, and I just wanted to give you an idea of them. And then I want to talk about one that is in the future, and there's a couple more coming, but I just wanted to talk about the one that we're most excited about. So projects that have launched, obviously the Vulnerable Student Support Team structure in the school district has launched and is established. And even though we're moving out and hopefully soon won't be in the same COVID situation with restrictions, these structures will stay in place. They might morph into something else, but it's a really fantastic way for us to build capacity in our system so that we know where to go to get different supports in the community. And our community partners have been very just amazing and receptive in building those relationships with us. Langley Interagency Network will continue as well, and the Y Clinic, which originally was health outreach at 3 schools and now has shifted so that it's virtually in every high school, which is really fantastic for a lot of our kids, as youth accessing are mostly talking about mental health and substance abuse issues, which is something that kids were seeing was lacking. And then the community school approach as well, and which provides equivalent of navigators in different at-risk communities, the Human Dignity Coalition and anti-racism, the Hub in the Early Years initiative, which is really all about prevention. And Lisa Lanchbury will be coming to talk to you more about that at a future board meeting. And the Seniors Isolation Forum, which I know seems out of place sometimes. My husband thinks so, but you know, I really was honored to be invited as part of my interagency work to the Seniors Isolation Forum the other day, and it absolutely connects to the work we're doing. When we were feeding different people that needed it in different areas this summer, we had a lot of seniors accessing the food programs. As well, we have a lot of seniors now raising our children in the school system, and they have specific special needs. So those are projects that are going to be ongoing. And then one that is in development that I'm really excited to explain to you if you don't know a little, if you've never heard of it before, is the Foundry. And I want to make sure I read the code of what exactly the Foundry is, because I could talk about it, but so it really is meant to be a one-stop shop of multiple services. It's specific for the community that establishes it. Langley was given the Foundry bid last year. This is really out of all of Rengay and Craig and multiple community partners hard work in writing this application, and we're granted it. And so the Foundry offers young people 12 to 24 health and wellness resources, services, and supports online right now, but also in a one central place, which will be right downtown near the bus loop. And so I am on the leadership committee that's in development, and just to give you an idea, the last meeting we had, we were really trying to set up a really inclusive, we're designing how to set up the space, and of course there'll be youth voices which are much stronger than ours. We're just giving it our first kick at the can, then the youth advisory will give their advice. When youth show up, they're greeted with a youth ambassador or peer, and we could have the different Foundries that I've utilized with other youth I've worked with in my past. I have found it to be exceptionally life-changing for youth that are at risk. They can get everything they need, and if they don't get it there, they can arrange it and come back, and it's such a welcoming, inclusive community. We're very fortunate to have it. Okay, so much like the Foundry, the early years hub model and even the seniors isolation are looking very similar. It's about a one-stop shop with navigators or connectors, and this is what the youth are saying loud and clear. It's what the seniors are saying, and I think it's what all of us need is those connectors to bring together the dots. So it'll be very, very exciting to see what comes out of the Foundry, and if we're able to link back and see how that improves our outcomes for kids as we move forward and the health of our community at large. So just to finish up, this was a review of what the school district is working on with community partners, and how we got here and what we're doing and what we're thinking of doing moving forward, and we're going to continue this work. And I really need to give a big thank you. I don't want to forget to just as many times as possible to all our community partners, and obviously you heard Craig. he wasn't kidding. Rangi really played a huge part in the base of this work, and I just really need to honor her for that work, and Craig too. Those two are, they were a dynamite team, and everybody I've talked to since, and every corner of the Langleys just recognizes that when they said they wanted us all to come together, everyone wanted to and work together in a very different way. And there's a real will and want from our community partners to shift things for our kids and our youth and our families. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And this is really exciting collective community work. And I can't wait to see what happens for our kids, for my kids. And then I'd really like to right now at this time have Magdi Gabriel come on the line, or come on I'll get off in a second, Magdi, and just share or outline the work, specifically our work as a school district for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya. My name is Magdi Gabriel. I'm the District Principal for Wellness and Diversity, but have been Principal of RE Mountain Secondary School for the last 11 years. And I can't tell you how excited I was to start hearing about this idea about the Foundry and our ability to connect students to the community. Certainly in schools, this is where the adults are that kids bump into. And when we talk about that one adult, that one connection that students can have that'll help them to be successful, a lot of time that happens in the school. And we recognize the central role that schools have in the life of students, and in our ability to connect them with people in the community and keep them connected even in school. And so this goes beyond, like, we talk about connection to teachers and to youth care workers and to counselors, to the learning support services. And these are structures that we have in place to make sure that kids get that connection in the school and can be successful in school. But perhaps there's some other things that are happening right now that we can help you understand beyond that, around how we support students in our schools to help them be successful. I was talking about our District Principal of Early Learning, Lisa Lynchbury, and she's talking about this hub concept that we have for our early learners. So beyond Strong Start and Ready, Set, Learn and Kinder Starts, we have these 4 hubs that provide support and connect families to outside agencies and counseling needs or needs around support for their diverse learners. And we start that right now at a very young age, because if we can get them hooked in and have them start to be successful as they come into school, and then the likelihood of success in school will continue on. The curriculum has changed just recently, and of course one of the core competencies that we have is personal social responsibility. And so we're trying to help them to learn about their identity, learn about their personal awareness, and do those things in school. Social emotional learning, if you have students in your elementary schools and even into the secondary schools right now, has become a big focus in school action plans, wanting kids to really be able to learn about how to self-regulate themselves, how to learn to relate to the other students that they have in their environment, to learn how to relate to the community. These are really important skills that kids have to be able to be successful in school and in the community as well. So we want them to be able to manage their emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, and establish and maintain positive relationships, and all these things, important skills to be able to be successful within their schools and outside. One of the things that we've been talking about in our community a lot lately and in schools is this idea of trauma-informed practice. And certainly when I was a vice principal in the 90s, which was a long time ago, there was a set of rules, right? And if a student did this, then these were the consequences for that. And we've learned so much since then about how it is that we need to learn the stories of students and learn about their lived experience, and then respond to that when they're running into things in school, because that one behavior that they have is really not tell us about this kid right now. And if we can learn about what's happening with that, then perhaps what really needs to happen right now is that we can provide some support to that student rather than discipline, that we can wrap around them a little bit. And so the idea of trauma-informed practice I emphasize physical and psychological and emotional safety for everybody, so that if they feel safe in the school, then they can rebuild a sense of control for themselves and become a little bit more empowered. So by better understanding their lived experiences, we can better connect them to the resources that they need from inside the school as well. We've been doing this a book study on Ensoling Our Schools by Jennifer Case. And she's worked with us 4 times now, and over 700 administrators, teachers, and staff have been working on this project. We've met 4 times so far. I think there's going to be at least 1 more meeting. And what she's trying to do is weave together methods of creating schools that engender, mental and spiritual and emotional health while learning also in our schools. And so again, this concentration of going beyond just the learner, but who that person is as a student, who that person is as a person, and making sure to support them in their experiences. So great pro-D that we're doing around that in schools. Certainly, there's some structures that we're creating in schools right now that are helping to make classes more inclusive and provide better supports for students. And so you may have heard terms like universal design for learning or response intervention. These are big buzzwords for strategies that we're using in schools to support learners. Universal design for learning, helping to give all students equal opportunities to succeed, offering flexible ways for students to access material and engage with it to show what they know. So trying to change up what we're doing in the classroom to have kids engage in different ways. And response to intervention is creating this kind of multi-tiered approach so that every student, regardless of where they are in their learning, can be supported in their learning and be given the access to the resources they need to be successful in school. We can get into real details about that, but big things that are happening right now at the school level to support students in their learning, because of course, if the kids are feeling more supported and are learning in schools, then they're going to feel more supported in the community as well. I spoke to the great work the district's been doing with the support of the Foundation for Vulnerable Students. And that external support that's come into schools has created these teams of support in schools, making sure that we know all the students that are needing that help in our schools, and then connecting them to supports that they need, whether that be food supports or clothing supports, or again, once we get to know that, then the other things that students may or may not need come to light, and we can connect them through counseling or youth care services or whatever to the outside supports as well. It's been an amazing focus that the district has taken this year to support students that are in need. We are taking steps right now to make sure that students see themselves reflected in their schools. And we're recognizing also that some structures and systems in our schools, in our communities, benefit some people over others. So we're committed to acknowledging the beautiful diversity in our schools and ensuring that all students feel a belonging in each of their schools, regardless of their background, and that students have the opportunity to thrive regardless of their situation. And so while we're approaching Diversity and Respect Week at the end of February here, we're going to try and ensure that the focus on diversity lasts all year long. And so we're creating some opportunities to collaborate on that and to learn. We're listening to stories right now, not just from our students, but from our teachers and administrators, to understand the diversity in our schools and to better reflect that and to better support that in our schools. And yeah, this is great work that's happening this year. The last thing that we'll talk about is the fact that we want to get back and talk to the students again, and the wonderful work that Renge began along with Craig last year to engage the youth and to learn their stories. We want to get back and connect with them, tell them about the things that we're planning, tell them about some of the things we've already begun, and get their responses to that and see whether or not we've hit the mark or not, and what things that we can adjust to. And ensure that all the things that we're doing right now are things that will reflect the things that they asked for and support their learning and their journeys in the community. So thank you for your attention, and I will pass it back over to Mal for questions.
Thank you, Chair Ross, and that concludes the report, and happy to take questions at this time.
So thank you very much for the presentation, Maggie Gabriel, Mel Gill, and Aya Hare, and Corporal Van Hurt. I should get this on the floor first, so I need a mover for the Board of Education receives the update on youth engagement initiatives for information is provided, and then we'll take questions. So it is moved by, and I can't see anyone's name. Okay, Shelley Coburn, thank you. And then also Suzanne Perot. Okay. All right, so questions from trustees. I see that Trustee Coburn is the first one to have a question, so go ahead with your question, Trustee Coburn.
Thank you. Did you turn your volume off, or chair?
Okay, could no one hear me?
Okay, that should be good. Thank you, Superintendent Gill and team. Or Assistant Superintendent, sorry, you got a promotion. You might not want it though. So I have a question, and it might be actually the superintendent that answers it. So we have a really toxic drug supply right now, super toxic, really potent. Lots of people are overdosing. Our youth right now are loving Molly and Xanax water, right, together. So Molly and Xanax in water, it's clear they're drinking it. And there's been a couple incidences lately with kids overdosing on this particular substance. So I'm just wondering if you can tell me where we are with respects to naloxone kits and having them on school sites, and if we've made any progress with that, because I don't think that the toxic drug supply is going away, and I don't suspect that kids are engaging any less. In fact, it looks like they're engaging more. So anything would be great.
I'd be happy to take that. Actually, just as you speak, when looking at our secondary agenda, and that is on the agenda for discussion in our schools. Obviously, you remarked on a couple of certainly some concerns that we have as a district as well, and we want to start that discussion with our secondary principals to see what steps we need to take in order to ensure the safety of our students.
Great, thank you.
So thank you for that. And Marnie Wilson, Trustee Marnie Wilson, would you like to ask your question now, please?
Great. Thanks. I don't know who my question will be directed to, but I really appreciated that you gathered the youth to get their perspective and listen to all that. It's so important because they're the ones being affected, and they need to be the input that we receive. And then I heard someone say that you will be re-engaging the youth and telling them what's going on and what you've done. I'm just wondering, will that be just re-engaging the same youth that you met with at the beginning, or will there be an ongoing basis where I think that's important to have something ongoing and to just keep reconnecting, because youth tell other youth, and that's sort of the best way to, in my opinion, get things out there. So just wondering about how often or how that will look. I can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Yes. So a number of the youth that we engaged with in 2019 have graduated out of our system. And so we did reach out to that group just to let them know where we were in the process. So we sent them all letters formally kind of indicating a quick summary of where they were. I wrote a reference for each one just to say thank you. In addition to that, part of the mandate that that District Principal Gobriel will be to keep re-engaging youth. And again, all youth. Again, we want to make sure that we are asking youth who don't normally get asked the question about how can we as adults in our system, in our greater community support students. So absolutely, the mandate is to continue that conversation for sure.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Marnie Wilson. And now we'll hear from Suzanne Perot. Ms. Perot, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So through the chair to perhaps Mel or the superintendent, I'm not sure which one. First off, I want to echo Trustee Wilson's comments regarding engaging the youth, and that was really the platform of where I was starting from as well, because it's so critical in that we remain engaged at all times with them and taking that thermometer. The biggest piece that jumped out for me, although the 4 points were really critical, the biggest one was connection to adults. Because for the youth to identify that when we're talking about trauma-informed practices, that's exactly what without them understanding, they're saying that they're experiencing trauma, they're lacking attachment, there's issues going on, and they need that safe place to be. That's what I'm hearing when I hear that foundational statement come forward. And so I love that as a district, we're increasingly moving towards trauma-informed practices, and that UDL piece across the platform in all our classrooms becomes such a critical tool, and that RTI for supporting our kids all over. I think it's really more of a statement versus a question, just when we're looking at the trauma-informed practices, that we continue to engage the conversation with NWS, and that's the attachment look, and how do youth need to attach to educators to work through their stuff, to have that sense of safety, and what can our educators do in that attachment process with our youth to create that sense of safety, and it becomes the foundational glue for what we're looking for with our kiddos. The other piece regarding getting information out, access to resources, this is something when former trustee Rosemary Wallace was with us, and she sat with me on the Inclusive Education Committee, we often talked about access to resources. And Mel, you might recall this, and where we were saying having that information at the front desk, at the resource rooms, at the counselor's office, that we have that compiled information. Even though there's stuff digitally in fight, flight, freeze mode, our parents and youth, they're not capable of reducing those thoughts down. And I would hope that we still are keeping that kind of in the background as we're looking at that conversation of access to resources as a tool to move forward, even in its basics form of brochure, handout card duplicated on our website as a portal as well. And so those were really more thoughts than they were questions, but I thank you for what you guys are doing. It's pretty fabulous. Hi, Magdi.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Just so you know, because I've been working with the secondary counselors as well as part of my role, one of the things that we're just starting to do right now is to update that connections card, so that at any point in time when a student comes to a counselor, they have access to, okay, these are all the resources that we need to be able to connect to, and we have all their contact information. So we're literally just in the process of updating that to make sure that it's all accurate, so that A, counselors know who to contact, and B, we can also give a card to a student so they have that themselves as well.
That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. Bless your hands.
So thank you, trustees. I just want to remind you, we are halfway through our meeting, and we've just gone through one item so far. So it was an important item, and I understand that Trustee Coburn has a follow-up. So be mindful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Again, to the Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Gill. So we talk a lot about youth and educators and service providers, and what we don't often talk about is parents. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. Often I think underlying this is the assumption that a lot of kids at risk, or that need supports don't have parents. So right off the bat, I've heard from a lot of parents, and I've seen it, that there's almost a disengagement of the parent. And one thing that I particularly like about the Foundry is that it has family and parental support and advocacy, because oftentimes the parent has to advocate. So you have MCFD at the table, you have everybody at the table, but the parent has little to no rights over the child, which is a bit of a problem. So my question to you is, aside from DPAC, which is already a very engaged group of parents, and nothing against them, I'm glad we have them, and they're it's good to have engaged parents, but aside from that parental community, where else have we sought input? Because typically when your child is, especially with concurrent disorders, there's a lot of shame and silencing and kind of putting over here in the corner, parent not as expert. and a little bit of being shut out and ostracized. So I'm just wondering how we do engage these parents that are probably a wealth of experience because they have lived this and they can tell us all about the gaps in the system, yet they're not at the table, so to speak. And so are we going out of our way to seek them out and engage the people who truly do have this firsthand subjective experience of trying to navigate the system as a consumer who's desperately trying to help their child? So any kind of insight onto that would be deeply appreciated.
Certainly. Very good question, and certainly something that obviously we haven't got to directly connect with parents. I think through the youth, as we start to have those direct conversations, we'll be able to do that work. On the other side of things, with a lot of the work around some of the groups in Langley, the supports in Langley, certainly they're working directly with families, but again, the barriers there you've already outlined, and those are barriers that we need to make sure that we're working around and through, and in order to provide supports for our families. So again, it's in order to get that information, we're going to have to find the youth and connect through the youth, connecting with the families in order to create those connections. So thank you very much for pointing that out. That's certainly something we need to take some next steps on.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, thank you, trustees. And if we could just, it's been moved and seconded, so I would like to call the question on this one. So the Board of Education received the update on youth engagement initiatives for information as provided. All those in favor, can I see hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4. And if anyone doesn't have their, keep their camera on, it's just a little bit challenging sometimes. Who am I missing? All right. There's no one in it. If there's anyone in opposition, it has to be written in the chat. So it's all of those in favor. I can see it's unanimous then. Thank you very much. Okay, it is passed. All right, thank you. Moving right along, we have the second part of the superintendent's report. This time it's the literacy results. So on to you. And first off, it's going to be Woody Bradford. Would you like to take us through that, Mr. Bradford?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I get the opportunity tonight to work alongside some colleagues and share with you our journey on the district literacy goal. Tonight, Marcella Moino, principal of LSS, Kim Anderson, principal of Lynn Fripps, and Don Tomlinson, our director of instruction, will support me in the presentation around our district literacy goal. Certainly, it's a privilege to be here tonight to continue our journey around literacy and share where we are and what we're doing with our students in our classrooms to continue our journey around literacy. The 4 presenters tonight represent incredible work that's going on in the field. Just want to make sure that everyone knows as we have this presentation tonight, this is hours and hours of work that are going into our classrooms each and every day from our teachers, our support staff, our principals and vice principals, our district staff to ensure we continue to move forward in this journey. And it is a journey, as if you look at the first slide of the presentation, this is what we're all about. We're about putting new ideas into the water and letting those ripple throughout the system and people be able to be supported in the journey that they're going on to support our literacy goal. As you will know, our framework for enhancing student learning guides the work we do in our district, and literacy and numeracy and social emotional learning are interconnected throughout this framework. And our mission and vision guide the work that we do with our core values, upholding the work we do within our classrooms. And literacy is the center of the work that we do to focus on it within our classrooms to support our students as they move along. As we go through our journey of literacy, what is actually navigating us and directing us in the work that we're doing? Just want to remind people and draw people back to our strategic plan in terms of the goal that we set for ourselves in terms of increase the number of students reading at grade level or their IEP or AIP goals to 80% by the time they transition out of the primary program. The primary program is K through 3. But in terms of what we're looking at with literacy within our district, we're really having a focus K to 12. And really, this is the question that we're asking all of us to be reflective on as we go to work each day and try to support our students around literacy and numeracy and social emotional learning. This presentation specifically around literacy is how can a focus on literacy at K to 12 improve overall student achievement? So what can we do throughout our system, K all the way through 12, to make sure that we're not just focusing on the primary years? We're knowing that literacy is a lifelong journey for our students, and we want to be able to give them the skills, and we want to really engage them in literacy. And with any journey you go on, just like those road trips of a lifetime you go on. It's always about moving forward. It's always about that continuous improvement, and it's always about looking back and reflecting on the experiences you've had and thinking through those memories in terms of the experiences you've had, reflect on them, improve and move forward again. And that's what we continue to do in our classrooms with the work that's going on, moving forward. So what's supporting us on this journey? And this framework we have in front of you is the structures and strategies that we're using with our principals and vice principals to move learning forward. And you'll see at the center of the framework is our students. Our students are the center, and are surrounded by our students are skills in literacy, numeracy, and social emotional learning with a focus on successful transitions. You'll notice that on one side of the graphic, we have our strategies in terms of what we're trying to do to implement within the system to really build capacity. And each one of these areas are things that we're working on with our principals and vice principals, and they're working with their teachers and support staff within their schools to have a better understanding of how we can support our students, and in this case, specifically in literacy. So what does a professional learning community look like within our schools to have a focus on literacy? How do we have rich discussions within our buildings around literacy to ensure that the skills our students need are being addressed and we have the strategies to be able to support them through that journey? When we think about RTI, UDL, how do we have access to all of the curriculum with a focus on literacy for all students? How do we do that in a classroom each and every day so that when students walk in, they know they're going to have a rich experience in literacy and have access to being successful and feel good about who they are and what they're doing within their classrooms when it comes to literacy and other subject areas? With the assessment piece, when we look at assessment within our schools, are we focusing on the right piece of assessment? And are we making sure that it's an ongoing journey with our students? It's not an event. It's not a beginning and an end. We're continually gathering information that's better serving our teachers and our principals and vice principals to better lay the foundation for our students to be successful within our schools. And then looking through that lens of always leading a culture of learning. And that's always looking forward and progressing in a way that we want to be successful and celebrate those successes. And then along this journey, there are some road signs that remind us about what's really important. Reading should be a joyful experience. So what do we need to do to ensure that we're making it a joyful experience and we're not just focusing on a score? We need to make sure that we engage our students in literacy, K through 12. We need to make sure that we're creating experiences that they feel are engaging for them, whether it be rich literacy opportunities in classrooms like the resources we're providing, whether it be read alouds in our classrooms, whether it be small group instruction, whether it be one-on-one instruction, whether it be through the use of technology. How are we engaging their minds in literacy? How are we moving away from reading just being about content to really being a place where we're engaging their minds to really think about literacy in a way that really activates their mind? And this is a really important reminder for all of us in our system. And this is really a belief that, you know, we started a few years ago. We've been working with our teachers and our support staff and principals and vice principals and district staff. We are all teachers of literacy. And we need to always be reminded of that as we walk in front of a group of kids and we're supporting them, that literacy is one of the core subject areas that we all need to work through. And we're all at different levels with that. And in our classrooms, making sure that that is front and center of the work that we're doing to support our students to be successful. So what are some of the actions that we're doing and continue to do within our schools to ensure that our students are going to be successful? Well, really starting at the ground level with our students, focusing on what assessments we have that are common throughout our schools and how we're using those assessments to really inform our practice. And again, not the event, but ongoing assessment. So when I'm sitting down and I'm having a guided reading lesson with a group of students, I'm continually gathering information, how I can better support my students in that experience for them to feel success. What are the skills, the essential skills my students need to be successful in reading? What do they come to every day that they already have strengths in? And where are their stretches? And what do I need to do to support those stretches for them to be successful? So whether it's making connections, whether it's making inferences, whether it's transforming their thinking, visualizing, questioning, strategies like that. What are our strengths for our students? What are the skills they need to be successful in each of those areas? And then when we focus on the instruction within our classrooms, quality instruction, which guides and navigates the work we do within our classrooms. The first people's principles of learning. So many experiences as we look through those principles about what we can do in our classrooms to make literacy a rich experience. Time and patience. So when we think about the primary years, K through 3, sure, we have a target of 80%, but we realize that literacy, just like numeracy, just like social emotional learning, those essential skills we have in our classrooms take time and patience. A focus on phonemic awareness and phonics. Lisa Lanchberry, early learning, district principal of early learning, working through that process with Dawn Tomlinson, our director of instruction, and her staff, George Kozovic, district principal, around how we start off with making sure that our students have the base level skills to be successful in language. And working through that, no matter where they are in the system, whether they're in grade 8, they're brand new to Langley, or they're in grade 1 and they're entering their first experience of really being taught the levels of reading, wherever they are in that journey, or they're in kindergarten, they're stepping into that classroom the first time, really that phonemic awareness and phonics, the focus there. And then the reading skill development, making sure that our classrooms are rich with literacy, whether it be whole group instruction, small group instruction, or one-on-one. And then the interconnectedness of literacy. Literacy is everywhere. So whether it's science, whether it's social studies, whether it's art, all the different ways that we can connect literacy into different subject areas. Once we leave the classroom, then we need to make sure that the second level of leadership within our building in terms of instructional leadership that's happening is being supported. So our principals and vice principals, in terms of their supportive classroom teachers, what do they need to know to be able to support the work that goes on in the classroom? The universal design for learning, access for the curriculum for all students, a response to intervention, how we set systems and structures up in our classrooms to support literacy instruction. It's a partnership between our support staff, our teachers, and our principals and vice principals and our district teams to make sure that we're wrapping around each of our students to provide them support in literacy. And then finally, the system supports at the district level, our instructional services team, our learning support services team, our Aboriginal services team, our ELL team, all the different teams that come together to support what's going on in our schools. We need to be responsive, and it needs to be equitable across our system so all students achieve success. So with that in mind, it really is about thinking and engaging the mind. So we look at literacy as an opportunity to have those experiences in a classroom, that read aloud and talk about those connections we're having with our students, to really engage their mind and really get them excited about reading. And that's where we continue to grow as a district in terms of what we're doing, is balancing the skill development we have with our students in literacy, specifically for reading, with the engagement level. So we're making sure that we're providing experiences for them to develop skills, but also be engaged in the activities that they're learning within their classroom. Because what we want to be able to do is open those doors for them to be lifelong readers. And we know that that's a skill that's necessary for every one of our students to be successful in life. And that's what we're trying to achieve for all our students to be successful K through 12 and beyond. Some of the things that we are working on around literacy, reading and writing. With our reading, we are doing our read alouds, our guided reading, word study, shared reading. These are some examples from our literacy guide that our instructional services team has created. And then alongside that, with our writing, modeled writing, shared writing, independent writing, we have a phenomenal resource that we shared with our principals and vice principals and teachers and support staff, our literacy guide that we're using. And that's a great place for us to begin to build the capacity for our teachers within our schools to support the work that we're doing. Some other resources that we're working on with our staffs around Adrian Gear's Reading Power, Jan Richardson's small group instruction, learning how to do that. We're on that journey of building capacity throughout the system and making sure that we have the skills to be able to deliver the work that we need to do each and every day in our classrooms for our students to be successful in literacy. So as we continue on this journey, we're really looking at a K-12 model. And tonight, I get the opportunity to share two stories with you, and Kim Anderson from Lynn Fripps and Marcello Marino is going to share their stories. Marcello's from principal of LSS, and they're going to share their journeys, and really their journeys are built on how we balance skills and enjoyment within each of their schools and what they're doing. Things like modeling literacy in our classrooms, having choice within our classroom, have access to literacy, the support we have to make sure that our students are successful, and the time we're taking to ensure we're intentional about literacy in our classrooms. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kim Anderson, principal of Lynn Fripps, and it is about a journey, and we want to enjoy the journey, and when we come across those potholes, we're going to make sure we work through those potholes to make sure that we can move forward on the journey and reflect back on those experiences to ensure that students are being successful with literacy. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kim.
Thanks, Woody. Good evening, everyone. And I'm really happy to share our journey with you. I am very humbled to work alongside a team that puts students first at every corner, and I'm happy to share the journey of the learning that we've been doing together. Our community is a very dynamic and culturally diverse community in which over 39 languages are spoken. The very myriad of abilities in our building really guides the work we do, enriches our learning environment, and points us back to providing rich, accessible learning for all of our learners. We are very happy to be back doing in-class instruction right now, and for those of you that can think back to March and April and May, our remote learning provided challenges but also gave us a lens into some of the areas of need for our students. We really took a look back with our family feedback, with our assessments, and with conversations in our staff, and realized that we had some work to do around reading and writing instruction. Those were the holes that seemed to be missing through the spring. And really we started to see a gap in some of our students that we wanted to close very quickly. So taking a look at that feedback, we started to make a plan. We truly believe that by giving students the tools needed to help them function at their best, by teaching them to be self-advocates for their needs, and by engaging students in innovative and strength-based learning opportunities with strong literacy instruction, will empower them to reach their full potential. And keeping that in mind and at the heart of what we're doing, we set some goals. We want all of our students to be reading at grade level by the end of grade 3. And we want to invest in thinking strategies for our intermediate students, knowing that we want to develop critical thinkers who are able to engage in deep, meaningful texts and derive meaning from those. And so with that, we made a plan. We determined that we had to do intentional reading instruction, that we had to think about how we were going to involve that with our students, and we did it in 3 ways. We've been collaborative, intentional, and responsive. At Frips, all of our kids are all of our kids, and you can see that in any of the conversations from teacher to teacher, from our ELL team to our resource team, from students to parents, and parents back to the teachers, and we really do have students at the heart of our learning. Our ELL team works to provide co-teaching within our classrooms, along with small group and large group instruction. And what we've determined and what we've seen happen is that those skills targeted for language acquisition for our ELL learners really benefit all of our students. And we've seen the impact of that across the grades. Our Learning Commons teachers provide incredible, enriching experiences with literature. They provide students with that love of literacy and fun activities such as our Reading Link Challenge, our Picture Book of the Year, and ways to engage in literacy, as well as supporting classroom teachers. Our resource team works to provide supports for students that are identified and not identified students, knowing that all of our kids deserve the very best, and we're constantly asking that question, what can we do next for a student? We have collaboration time that allows teachers to work together, to mentor one another, to watch each other teach, to learn from one another, and to really dig into how do we best provide instruction for our students. And that collaboration time can be rich and powerful for our teachers. And our literacy team really works to focus us back on the goal and make sure that we're taking the next logical steps in terms of moving student learning. Together, those pieces support learning in our school, and it's enriched by the parent participation. We have a parent community that gets behind us in all of our initiatives, that focuses their alignment along our action plan for learning, and who just last year enriched our classrooms by providing classroom libraries for all of our classes. So that collaborative piece really speaks to the work we do as a team, and that includes students, staff, and parents. We have been intentional. 2 years ago at Frips, we dug into determining essential skills in language arts. We found those skills that would be most critical. What do we need each student to learn at each grade level, and how do we ensure that they're getting those skills before moving to the next level of skill? How do we build that foundation of literacy? We revisit those skills and make sure that we're on mark each year, but really taking a look at how we dig in. And we focused on small group, whole group, and individual instruction that targets those skills to make sure we're closing the gap for our students. It's been really critical to take a look back and make sure that we're on point with that. All of our instruction, cross-curricular in science and socials, has had literacy as a focus. How do we take reading and writing and rich oral language opportunities and put that into everything we do? It's the intentional piece about making sure literacy is the focus of what we do. We've developed common language and common resources, and we're sharing common strategies to make sure that we're reaching all of our kids. We've been responsive. The first People's Principles of Learning says that learning takes patience and time, and that a student will learn when it's their time and when they're ready, but also that it happens in an environment that's rich and it provides for authentic learning. And so we do meet students where they're at. We take a look at what skills a student needs, how do we target that, and what interventions have already happened. We take a look at the data and where those students have come from, and we're responsive based on best practice. Our sports are also student-centered and really have student strengths at the heart. How do we engage students in something that they can be passionate about to help move their learning? So where does that leave us? Well, we're pretty excited. We're looking right now, when we took a look at our data this week, 52 of our students made gains of a year or more in literacy achievement in our first term alone. It stands to reason and show the work that we're doing with intentional reading has really made a difference for our students. We're seeing gains across the board. Our staff continue to find ways to meet student needs and to dig into what we can do next. How do we find the next step? How do we meet the next need for our student? We have flexible schedules and fluid supports. It's not uncommon to see resource teacher schedules or SEA schedules change weekly to meet students where they're at in the moment. And we recently launched our story walk. If you've seen that, it's a pretty neat way to get outside and enjoy a story as a family. That, combined with our efforts to create a dual language program, are inviting parents back into the learning and asking them to be part of our journey. We really do feel like parents are part of the process and part of our community in helping students learn. We continue to build teacher capacity through staff meetings and in service and just discussions in the hallways about how do we do what's best next for students. Our weekly blog that shares our story not only shares the what, but the how and the why of what we do every day. It invites parents into the conversation and allows them along the journey in our learning. It's also given teachers a talking point. Hey, what's that great thing happening in your room and how do I make it happen in mine? And it's given us a chance to continue the conversation. Each of our students is an individual with their own story, and our work to move learning for our whole community is dependent on our ability to move learning for every individual student based on their need. Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Far and away, the best prize in life is the ability to do work and work hard at work worth doing." And when I take a look at the incredible work that my team is doing collaboratively, intentionally, and responsibly to support all of our students as all of our students, it really makes me humbled and proud to be part of that team. I'm going to turn it over to Marcello.
Thank you, Kim. Very inspiring. And so my job is to take a few minutes. By the way, my name is Marcello Moino, principal of Langley Secondary School. My job this evening is to tell you a little bit about literacy at the secondary level, and not just any secondary level, at Langley Secondary. And so in terms of literacy at secondary, I think sometimes we take for granted that literacy happens in elementary schools, and we equate literacy with learning how to read. And I think very clearly, in Woody's words, literacy has to be a K-12 initiative. When our staff was looking at literacy and working to define it, you'll see in terms of what our essential questions were. I think one of the words that a staff member used was access. Literacy is like access. When you are literate in a body of knowledge, you have access to that body of knowledge. When you have access, you then have opportunity. And when you have opportunity, especially at LSS or ACSS, one of the other pilot schools, then you have equity. And when you have equity, again, that becomes our purpose, making sure that students at LSS have every opportunity that any other student in this district has. So you'll see then that the district chose ACSS as its first pilot secondary school last year, and LSS was chosen this year. We were very honored to work with Devin Stokes-Bennett from Instructional Services. As well, the conversation started last year with Monica Spreitzer when she was still district teacher librarian, but we're very fortunate that she's come back from secondment and is back at LSS, well-timed as we tackle literacy this year in the school. And the literacy team at LSS has included, obviously, Devin, Monica, the admin, but also teachers from various departments, and very proud to say SEAs as well. When we got together as a literacy team, 4 essential questions emerged. The first is, what does it mean to be literate? And again, at secondary, it's a little different than at elementary. And at secondary, I think we sometimes take for granted that our students are literate, right? They've made it this far. And of course, we know that literacy has different levels. And at secondary, it's not just about learning how to read, it's about what you do with that reading. And so again, access. Why does it matter at LSS? And again, I've used the word equity already. And that, again, that was one of our key questions. And I think equity was definitely one of the key answers. Third question, how do we improve and increase literacy at the secondary level? Again, if we sometimes take it for granted at secondary, what can we do in intentional ways to make sure that we're tackling literacy head on? And finally, how do we leverage the formative potential of the Literacy 10 assessment? Now, we want to be cautious not to spend too much time on the Literacy 10 assessment. It's one tool, but again, it's also a tool that we want to make sure we're using in positive ways. And of course, the subtext of all of this was, how do we make literacy a staff focus while in the midst of an all-encompassing pandemic? Now, obviously, literacy in schools makes perfect sense. But, and again, as you would be well aware, the first few months of the school were all about reinventing what school looked like. But along the way, and this says a lot about the staff at LSS, while we were tackling those problems with the staff at LSS, we're again knowledgeable enough, flexible enough to know that our students matter and their literacy in terms of equity also matter. So the structures that we used, and as you've heard from Kim and from Woody, the idea of a literacy team having a guiding coalition, incredibly important to keep momentum. Along the way, we also used the gift of time. And you'll notice the second item, School Improvement Day, and the last item, Design and Assessment Day. Those are larger chunks of time in which to introduce topics, to dig deeper with staff in topics. And so those 2 days, invaluable to us. The third bullet, literacy assessment credentialing. We also, again, with the support of IS and Don Tomlinson, we were fortunate enough to host at LSS a Literacy 10 assessment credentialing session, where 2 trainers from the Ministry of Education came to LSS on the Pro D Day, trained over 25 Langley district staff members, over half of whom came from LSS. And then the 2 structures that allow momentum to continue, at least in the high school setting, department head meetings and staff meetings, which are held monthly. In terms of the LSS journey then thus far, we thought it made sense to tackle the first 2 questions first. Because again, if at secondary we sometimes take literacy for granted, then we needed to rekindle that purpose for literacy at secondary. And so we asked again, what does it mean to be literate? Why does it matter at LSS? And we used that School Improvement Day to dig deep and to kick off this what became one of our action plan goals. In terms of that day, along with discussing and getting staff to share their ideas of literacy and then to try to bring that all together, we also made sure we introduced the Literacy 10 assessment to staff because it would have been the very first time they would have seen it. This allowed them to see what their students will see or would see when they wrote the Literacy 10 assessment. And it also allowed us to take one section and dig deep into it and again, discuss what skills are actually being assessed in this assessment. Because again, the purpose wasn't the Literacy 10 assessment, it's about the literacy skills that make up that assessment. And then, and again, a key part at secondary is how do we then connect literacy to departments? If you remember your high school days, then you will recall that schools very much secondary are set up by departments. As imperfect as it can be, it's also very functional. So for example, a science teacher, they see learning through the lens of a science teacher. The same thing with a social studies teacher, the same thing with a shop teacher, a foods teacher, a fine arts teacher. And so while learning has many, I guess, similarities across all of those subjects, there is something that is quite specific to that department and in terms of through the lens through which they see learning. Thus, we had to make sure we connected literacy to that departmental lens if it was really going to have meaning and take hold. Along the way, we also added the third and fourth questions. And so at that Literacy 10 assessment, we invited staff. We had, again, more than half of the 25 Langley staff members. And I'm actually proud to say that the trainers from the ministry, they had commented they had been doing training for several decades for English 12, English 10, provincials, that kind of thing. They commented that that was the first time that they had ever done a credentialing session where administrators and SCAs were present. And so that was something that we certainly took as a source of pride, that this is not just about the English department, this is a school-wide effort. After that assessment, we had debrief meetings with that crew who went through that credentialing. And our most recent activity was a data dig, where we actually looked at the student results, which actually just were published a few days ago, and tried to make some sense and try to draw some themes from our students' scores on that literacy assessment. In terms of, again, strategies and structures to keep the literacy topic going and to keep it topical in terms of our staff, we made sure that we tackled it through the department head meetings. And as I said, departments are a key structure that help make high schools run. And if we could then tap into that department head structure, then we're working with folks who have a lot of, I think, social capital with the other members of their departments. So of our 5 department head meetings to start the year, 3 of them had a significant amount of time dedicated to literacy. Again, starting in October with literacy in your department and trying to make those connections. We then connected in November the literacy goal to our action plan for learning to show that this wouldn't just be an English department activity, but an entire school activity. And then in our most recent staff meeting, just this month, or sorry, department head meeting, we had Monica Spreitzer, our school teacher librarian, take a literacy strategy, demonstrated it to the department heads, had them work through it. And again, she chose something that was common to all departments, vocabulary. Every department has a jargon that is specific to it. And so if we're going to give our students access, then let's start at the very beginning in terms of vocabulary. And in fact, the math department liked it so much, they took the exact activity, because we used math words, because we figured most teachers, except for the math people, wouldn't necessarily be confident in the math language. And the math department actually took that and brought it right to their next department meeting. Another very important structure, and one that keeps momentum going in terms of those early conversations, is the idea of staff meeting. It's the one time every month where we can get not all staff, but most staff together. And in doing so, again, we keep the topic front and center. So at the November staff meeting, we actually had the accreditation team, the ones who went through that training, we had them present and share with the entire staff, not only what was it like marking and assessing and getting credentialed, but what were the skills that they saw that made that assessment a useful piece of data. And again, we had teachers from just about every department present at that staff meeting. At the November Design and Assessment Day, shortly after, we again, after we introduced the idea and had department head feedback, we then brought it to all staff for a deep dig as we took a good portion of that day to talk about literacy, the action plan, and again, that all-important department lens. And then finally in January, when staff came together just about a week and a half ago, Monica Spreitzer again brought another literacy strategy into that staff meeting and used infographics. The idea behind an infographic, again, it crosses all department levels, whether you're, for example, looking at a social studies source, something that you take from a newspaper that might have, for example, a list of or dates, for example, of different events that have occurred in time, and that have impacted the environment. There's a whole bunch of information, there's visuals. How do you take that as a student and make sense of that infographic? That type of infographic, again, it exists in all departments. And so with that, using all those structures so far, we still know we have plenty of steps to take in terms of our journey. And so the first question will be, again, and we started the data dig, but now we need to bring that to staff as well. What does the data tell us? And I want to be clear, it's not just the Literacy 10 assessment. That is only one piece of evidence. We know that HD Stafford has a DART assessment they do at grade 8. What will that tell us? We know that in terms of reading, our library circulation has statistics, and we've asked Monica to provide us with that so we can add those stats into our action plan. Student feedback, teacher assessment, all of that will create that larger picture of data. We want to make sure we then take that data, share it with staff, and that will fine-tune our direction. Because ultimately, if this needs to be done intentionally at secondary, if we're going to make sure that our students, again, have access, have opportunity, and have equity. We want to make sure that these strategies we're talking about are targeted and that teachers are able to use those in their classroom, that we're building that capacity in our staff. And again, along the way, we want to make sure we remind staff why literacy matters specifically at LSS. And then again, looking at all that data so that we can actually answer the question, are we making a difference with what we're doing? And if not, then let's change course and continue finding different ways to connect with our students in terms of their literacy. So with that, thank you for your time, and I now pass you on to Dawn Tomlinson, our Director of Instruction.
I want to thank Marcello and Kim for sharing the journey in their schools around literacy. There is powerful work happening in our schools, and it is so exciting to see the changes that are happening to ensure that our students are continuing to develop their literacy skills, which we know are foundational to successful lifelong learning. I'd like to just take a moment to share our next steps in our journey to attain our literacy goals in Langley. First and foremost, we have a goal around our primary reading results. So our next step is to really look at our primary reading results that are coming out in term 2. So in March, we will be collecting those reading results. Admin will be collecting those at their schools and looking at those reading results. And this is especially important right now, as we know that our students arrived in September behind as a result of being out of our schools for months, and our teachers have been working so hard with their students, ensuring that there's a real focus on literacy to ensure that all of our students have that foundation to be successful as they continue their educational journey. So we'll be looking at that data and looking at what students need, more intervention work, and what do we need to do to wrap around these students to make sure that they're successful. And then our next step after that is collecting our primary reading results at the end of the year to examine the growth, to look at the growth, and really to focus on the growth over the year this year, and then to look at any areas of concern. That's a really important data to us as a district as well, because we need to look at the data to determine if there are district interventions that are necessary, taking a systemic look at providing additional support to schools that may need it. So it also informs us as an instructional services team as to what are the needs out in schools, what do teachers still need, and strategies, tools in their tool belt to make sure that our students are all going to be successful in literacy. We also need to continue our systemic learning journey on initiatives such as ensoling our schools, because we know that that's going to make a huge difference. to how successful our students are. And I was really excited to hear Magdi talking about the Instilling Our Schools initiative, because it really does combine some really important strategies like our social emotional learning, our universal design for learning, and our response to intervention. It really hugs all of those together. And we know that if we implement those strategies in our schools, that our students are going to be more successful. As an instructional services team, we are going to continue our work with secondary schools, shifting mindsets to one that all teachers see and understand that literacy crosses all discipline areas, and that it's vital that we design opportunities at secondary to continue to develop literacy skills. And really exciting to hear Marcello talking about Monica Sprite, she was bringing as a teacher librarian, what she can bring to the table in terms of some strategies that all teachers can use across disciplinaries to continue to develop those literacy skills. We've also been examining the research, particularly around adolescent literacy skill development. Tying back to what Marcello was talking about in terms of the work that we've been doing at LSS, but also at Aldergrove Secondary. We began working with that staff last year and implemented a number of initiatives to continue to develop the students' literacy skills. And as we were doing that work, we were also learning a lot of things ourselves. And one of the surprising things that we found out was that the grade 9 students, and those are the students we were primarily focused on, were not accessing the library. And in fact, in our interviews with students, we found out that they didn't see themselves as readers, and they weren't reading for pleasure. And then we looked at the circulation stats at ACSS, and then we compared them to Betty Gilbert from the year before, where those students had come from. And there was a significant difference between these circulation stats. So we worked with ACSS to make the library more accessible, to make it more inviting, particularly to our grade 9 students, put a huge plan in place in order to continue to work with them on how do we get our students to see themselves as readers and to read for pleasure. And we're going to continue to work with schools in this area and taking a deep dive into what's happening in secondary schools around developing literacy skills. Ultimately, we are working on creating plans with all of our schools to ensure we have a focus not just on reading instruction, but on reading for pleasure, and to ensure that all of our learners identify as readers. Thank you, and that ends our presentation, and we are certainly here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Kim and Marcello, for your presentation tonight and sharing your knowledge with us and the journey that you're on. So are there any questions at all for us in terms of from our board?
Okay, trustees, I'm on deck. So if I could just get a mover for tonight's literacy results presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So I need a mover, please. Who's going to move that for me? Trustee Marty Wilson to do that. And I need a seconder if I could. And there's Suzanne Perot with a big C. Thank you, Suzanne. And okay, open up for questions. First question is from Suzanne Perot. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim and Marcello and Dawn and Woody. Your work is just so wonderful. I'm always going to come in from my special lens that I come in from, and I'll be quick as possible with my many words and try to synthesize it. I want to acknowledge and support the powerful understanding of literacy, especially coming into our high school. Marcello, you're there, so this will make you smile. You know, my youngest, who's with you now, started writing in grade 9. He started reading in grade 5. Where I'm going with this is, for those of us with children with needs, development is primary, age is not. And so what I'm trying to understand as a district, as we continue to move forward when we're talking about equity and responsive for student success, because it's such an important platform and foundation for us to be working on in that first principles concept. I got a couple of questions that pour out of it. So the first one is going to be, will we have alternative tools outside of phonics for our families and teachers to access, like Orton Gillingham? My kiddos, all three of them that are on the spectrum, responded only to whole word, look and say type reading. We went through every phonics process, didn't work, we hit walls. So wondering if we have other approaches that we're going to be considering supporting our families with, and our learners, most importantly, there for our families. And another question is the reading results that you're speaking to, Dawn. Are we breaking them down at all in terms of looking at designations and where our kiddos are at? And is that something that we can get to look at just from a statistical perspective to see what's going on with them? I think that would be really, really helpful. As a victory statement to our educators, especially coming out of Stafford and LSS, my kiddo, who was deemed not to be able to graduate, just finished his final exam in trades today and got 86%. That is huge, and it's a testament to the wraparound service that our district has provided and supported this guy to his success and building his confidence. And I'm going to cry because, again, like, it's been a long haul, and we've been told he wasn't going to do this, and he wasn't going to read, and he wasn't going to write, and he's doing it, because we stuck with the process and we built into who he was as a person and finding those right supports for him. So I just wanted to share that because it's a punctuating celebratory message to the good work that you guys are doing and the research that you're leaning into, while I'm still always looking to see that we're keeping our eyes wide open for those challenging learners like mine that really, really struggled. And probably still would never identify himself as a reader, yet he reads every single day. So I'll leave that with you to navigate through.
So first of all, Trustee Pro, congratulations, proud mom moment. Very exciting, and certainly it's been a partnership, and the work that you've been doing at home and the work we've done at our schools together, having success. So congratulations. And I think you bring up a really good point in terms of looking at multiple ways in terms of what we're doing to support our students. And as Dawn said in her presentation, we continue to look at tools in the toolkit for our teachers, first and foremost, for them to have the tools to be able to support students with different needs in our classrooms. We need to have our resource teachers build their capacity in those areas, our youth care workers, our support workers, our instructional services team, our learning support services team coming into the schools, and it goes back to a system that's responsive and equitable in terms of what we're doing. And so we're definitely on a journey. There's no doubt about it. I think in terms of just an understanding across the system, as Marcello talked about, this is really a K-12 journey. And we need to make sure we continue to put tools in the toolkit. We've got a lot of learning to do in terms of what we're doing. We'll continue to focus on that. In terms of the data, you bring up a really good point in terms of making sure that we're drilling that data down to actually get the information that's going to inform the practices that are going to work. And so looking into the research to know exactly when we have information that's telling us that we're not having success with a certain group of students or certain group of students that have certain needs that need to be addressed, what are we doing about it as a system? And I think that's where we have to really dig into the universal design for learning. We need to really understand that and unpack that. We talked about that connectedness with adults, right? I mean, right at the heart of everything we're doing, it starts with that relationship, and then being able to build the tools to be able to support our students. So there's a range of things that we need to continue to do to drill the information down. I think you've targeted too in the questions you've asked. Continue to look at desegregating that data to inform us about individual students' needs and groups of students so we can have that, and then finding the strategies that are working for those students. And I think you and I have had this conversation before. It's not just a K-3 journey for us. We need to make sure that we're looking at this all the way through the system and respond to it and make sure that we're finding the right ways to go about it. And it's in partnership with our parents. and our caregivers to make sure that we're being informed in terms of what's going from outside agencies to help us, and make sure we're walking together as partners in education to support the students in our schools. So Dawn, I don't know if you wanted to comment on anything additionally to that in terms of information for your lens of instructional services.
No, I think you said it all right there. Absolutely. I'm in total agreement with you. And to your point, Woody, we continue to learn. You know, when we started working with ACSS last year, we found out some very surprising things, and the teachers found out some surprising things. You know, when we started to use a DART assessment on the students, we found out things that we had made assumptions, and teachers had made assumptions. So it's just always looking at what else can we do, or what can we do differently. We need to wrap around every child, just like your son. We need to make sure we're wrapping around every child to find out what is it going to take for that child to be successful. How do we do that with each individual child? Because it's not about a group. You start with a group, and then it goes down to a small group, and then it goes down to those individuals. And what do we need to do for each and every child to make sure they're successful?
Thank you, trustees, and thank you, team, Dawn, Kim, Woody, and Marcello. Great presentation. A number of the trustees in the chat made some comments on just how much they appreciated the great presentations tonight. So we've had a mover and a seconder, so and we've had some discussion. So I'll call the question. All those in favor that the Board of Education receive the superintendent's report on literacy results for information as presented. Can I see your hand, please? Thank you, and there you go. Thank you. All right, it's all in favor. It is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, we have the Secretary Treasurer's reports. Quickly on to the capital projects update. Go ahead. Would you like to present first, and then we'll get a mover and seconder after.
Thank you, Chair Ross. I just want to provide a quick update for public and for the board on some of our bigger capital projects that we've been undertaking as a district. Wanted to start off with the original capital funding project agreements. These are what we sign off with the ministry when we start these projects. You can see for each of the three projects what the total budgets were to start as the total budget, and also the cost share arrangement for it. So like on Southwest Yorkton, you can see the district contributed or will contribute $3.5 million towards this project, and just a little over $426,000 to the LSS seismic project. The ministry has started to change the way that they do their capital project agreements. You'll notice with Southwest Yorkton and Shortreed that their reserve amounts are a lot higher proportionally than what LSS was. They now make districts justify things at an earlier stage, and if they can't be quantified exactly, then they get put in a reserve and have to be requested further down the road. So we'll speak that on a couple of our projects. Langley Secondary has wrapped up. This was a very long multi-stage process to do the seismic work at this school. We had a lot of issues with escalating costs as this project went. We had a lot of phases and had to do pricing and costing as the project went on. The ministry did allow us to move all the reserve amounts into the approved budget, as you can see, so we had the full funding envelope allowable. Unfortunately, those funds weren't enough to complete the project. We are just slightly over $1 million, $1,063,000 over budget due to those escalations of costs that were happening during the life of this project. These are funds that unfortunately the district has to make up, and what we are looking at is doing just over $110,000 from ministry restricted capital. Those are funds that the ministry has to sign off on. We have submitted a letter to the ministry requesting approval to use those. We are also planning to use the remaining amount of our local capital, just over $906,000. And even with those two capital accounts being fully depleted, that leaves just under $46,000 that the district will have to fund out of accumulated surplus, which will be part of the amended budget discussion that'll be coming to the board in February. Wanted to show a couple pictures. We shared in the past what the first couple phases look like. With the picture on the right is the main building block, and the section on the left of that picture is the admin wing that was the latest addition. You can see it better in the picture on the left. the inside of the admin, and then the hallway basically that joins the first phase with the next phase, with the gym being on the left side. The district also, while we were doing this, decided to spend some of our annual facilities grant, as there was a section that was remaining from the original building that obviously looked a little older and not tying in. So we've done some work on the outside of the gym and what is the castle lobby, which is now the main entrance in the school, out of our annual facilities grant to make it look in line with the new building. And we've also done some work, and the district continues to work on some of those areas that will need upgrading over the next couple of years. Southwest Yorkson had mentioned that they do a lot more in the reserve. Now that the tender and the construction has gone out, we've requested and received approval to move $8.8 million from the reserve up into the project budget. So now you can see that the project budget is $27.6 million. This project is moving along well. They've started the drywall work. Most of the studs are up. The big one for us was getting the roof on, which is always tricky this time of year with the weather. That is up. We are now watertight and are on schedule to complete for September 21. Just a couple of pictures so you can get an idea of kind of what it looks like as it continues in the construction process. The Ministry announced a new seismic project for the district on December 10th for Short Reed Elementary. You can see on the diagram there, this building is made up of 4 blocks. The seismic portion covers blocks 1, 2, and 3. Block 4 being an addition that was done later and is seismic and is compliant. This project is mainly dealing with issues with the roof and the walls and the decking that are constructed to that. So the only way to deal with that is to basically remove sections of roof bit by bit, connect those things properly, and then put in the roofing. For us to be able to do that, we will need 4 portables on site to stage students and staff during the construction. We hope to start in September of 2021 with hopefully completion by January 23. With that, I'll hand it back to our chair.
Well, and thank you very much for that report. I need a mover for the capital projects update 2021. I need it moved by Shelley Coburn, another trustee, please, and Suzanne Perot. Thank you very much. Okay, and the Board of Education receives the report on capital projects 2021. For information as presented, can I have a call or a question on that? And I see those hands. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on now to the annual review of trustee remuneration. I know my wife's personal favorite topic is my paycheck. So if we can get this moved and seconded, and then we'll get the comments. So let's get a mover, David Todd, and seconded by Tony Ward. Thank you very much. And let's move it over to you. Any comments at all for that presentation at all for us? I know that there was some information that was shared to us with us.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Most of the information is in your package, so I'll just be brief, just to remind the public that the board did adopt new policies in December. A part of that policy process did create a change in how trustee compensation is done, and that is to link it to the Canada Consumer Price Index. So based on the last rolling 12 months that they updated in December, that rate is 0.7%. And with that, I will hand that over to our chair for the motion.
Thank you very much. And so let's get discussion open on this and see where it goes. So I don't have a speakers list as of yet. Who would like to speak to this, or this might move on quickly? I think it's really important that it comes to us every year. So just a question to the Secretary Treasurer is, this will come to us still annually though?
The plan, the policy states annually for board approval, so the board will have to approve this on an annual basis.
I always think it's important that we all squirm. We always have to, it's unusual to be able to vote yourself a raise. So not many opportunities in life you get to do this. I see David Todd has a question, so we'll let you go first, and then I'm going to get on to Trustee Ward. Go ahead, Mr. Todd.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to make sure a little bit of back understanding. We did change the policy, and in the previous iteration, the former board struck a blue ribbon panel that looked at salary or remuneration for trustees. And what did happen was, of course, there was a fairly hefty jump in salaries because they waited till the end. This is probably a fair and more transparent way of dealing with it, because it's actually going to be going and basically taking CPI or Consumer Price Index and doing it. So you're not going to see a large, well, at this point, I can't predict or I can't speak for future boards, but a large jump at the end of a term. And it's probably a more systemic way of doing this, where the increase is tied to inflation. So just in the interest of being transparent, and it was something that we did look at when we did the policy review. So hopefully that's stated and that's understood. I don't know if Secretary Treasurer, if you want to comment, or if that's basically the intent of this.
That is the intent. The last policy, like you had mentioned, Trustee Todd, was there was a committee set up that does that. One of their recommendations was that the trustees go to a CPI index instead of do this every 4 years for raises. The board did at that time vote that down being automatic and wanted that to be part of the policy discussions, and that's what has happened.
Thank you very much. And go ahead, Trustee Ward, on for you.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think most of it's being said, that what I wanted to say. I just want to say, you know, as just a citizen for years and seeing politicians vote in their own raises, so to speak, obviously can be quite unnerving to people. But we did go through quite a process here. I'd seen it before, where you see politicians and whipsawing that happens from community to community. So I think tying it to the Consumer Price Index makes a lot of sense. And we do this annual thing, but we're kind of hands off to some degree. I think it's reasonable and it's easier to accept as Joe Public. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more comment, but before I do that, just want to remind trustees that we will have to vote on extending the meeting after this. So go ahead, Shelley Coburn.
Right, when this was all agreed upon when when the last board decided to increase the remuneration, correct? No?
So the last board did the last raise, correct? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but did we not discuss tying increase to annual rate of inflation?
They did discuss it. They did vote down that being automatic and referred it to policy to have the new way of doing the remuneration for trustees linked to CPI, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, no more comments? Seeing none. All those in favor, I'll read out the motion if I could, that the Board of Education approve the increase of 0.7% effective January 26, 2021 based on the 12-month change in CPI in accordance with the Board Policy Number 7, Section 11, and to update the salaries in Policy Number 7, Section 11.1 with the new salaries. All those in favor of the motion? If you're against it, in the chat, okay? No one's against it, so it's all in favor. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
It's not.
Did I miss something, Ms. Coburn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you against it? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's opposed. Oh, I can't even read my own. All right. Thank you very much. It is not unanimous. It is carried with Trustee Coburn opposed. Thank you very much. On to the next thing, and I just want to remind everyone we're going to have to vote now to add 20 minutes onto our meeting for tonight to see if we can get through the balance of the committee reports, etc. A mover for that is Shelley Coburn, seconded by, okay, David Todd, and all those in favor of another 20 minutes? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, on to committee reports. This is over to Trustee Ward, is the chair of the Education Committee. And would you like to read out the motion and then I will ask for a seconder for you.
Perfect. So help me out if I steer off course here. We have 3 motions, so I'll start off with the first one, and it's regarding Langley Secondary Soccer Academy and fees. So the motion is that the Board of Education approves the Langley Secondary School Soccer Academy for September 2021 as presented.
Okay, can I have a mover for that? David Todd, seconded by Suzanne Perot. Okay, any discussion, please? See no discussion. All those in favor? Okay, one's opposed. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. On to the second one, sir.
Okay, so number 2 is the annual review of specialty academy fees. So the motion is that the Board of Education approves the fees for the specialty academies for the 2021 and 22 school year as presented.
Okay, and all those.
Oh, I missed one, by the way.
I thought we did miss one too. Okay. Let's
Do I have to?
Previous one, if we could, the Board of
Education. Too far ahead here. Okay, so I'll start fresh. Okay. Yeah. So the motion is that the Board of Education approves the Langley Secondary School Soccer Academy fee of $500 for the 2021 and 22 school year.
Good, and moved by David Todd and also Mr. Ward. Thank you. And all those in favor, any discussion on that? None, okay, all those in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. On to the third one, sir.
Okay, so here we go. Got the number wrong. So that the the motion is that the Board of Education approves the fees for specialty academies for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Good, and moved by Marnie Wilson and Suzanne Perot, seconded. Thank you very much. Discussion on these? Okay, Shelley Coburn, you have a question? Oh, no, you have anything. Okay, fine. David Todd, do you have a question? Nope. Okay, let's Terry call the question. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please. Can I see those hands? Ah, you guys are great. Thank you very much. Carried unanimously. All right, perfectly. Last one, sir.
Okay, there we go. There's 4 actually. Okay, so the motion is that the Board of Education approves the fee structure for the International Baccalaureate program. I said that. Did I say that right?
Yes.
At RE Mountain Secondary for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Very good. Your literacy strengths are amazing. All right, and so moved by Marnie Wilson, Trustee Todd is seconded. Thank you. All right, and all those in favor, please, or any discussion, I should say. Oh. No discussion? I know it's late. Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. All right, we're coming down to the end of the meeting. New business. So we've got a new some policy, some motions that have come forward. So I'd like to do Marnie Wilson's first, and the first one I'd like to read out, if it's okay. Be it resolved that the BCSDA advocate to the Ministry of Education to eliminate the foundation skills assessment. Okay, that's moved by Marnie Wilson, I'm assuming. And who is the seconder for that? Okay, Suzanne Perot. Thank you very much. And did you want to give some feedback on that? Everyone can see the rationale. I'm not sure what your thoughts are, and then we'll get into a discussion. Do you have a comment to lead out discussion? Marnie?
Well, I would like to read the rationale because I don't know if the people at home can see it.
Okay, would you like to read it out then? Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so we must recognize the valuable role that education assistants play in our education system. Currently, there are no standards.
We're actually on the foundation skills assessment one.
Oh, sorry.
That's the one I have in front of me. That's the one I was speaking to anyway.
Okay.
My apology.
I should be listening to what motion I'm doing. So this form of standardized testing is outdated and does not align with the Ministry of Education's current philosophy on assessment. The FSAs are a flawed metric that do little more than emphasize a socioeconomic ranking of schools. Teachers have much richer and more effective ways to gauge student progress and identify challenges that can then inform their teaching. The Fraser Institute uses the results to rank schools in a perverse and misleading report that has been condemned and discredited by the education community. So I'm really hoping that people will vote in favor of this because I believe that the FSAs really hold no place anymore in our education system.
Okay, thank you. And questions from other trustees? Do you have any comments? David Todd, you're first.
Thank you to the chair. So once again, I find myself fully understanding and hopeful, and I'm with you on almost exactly half of this. I think that the foundation skills assessment can be by itself an okay assessment as a teacher, just by itself. I think what has happened with it, it's become its use has become corrupted, and I'm not saying it's a corrupt system, but its use has been corrupted by the Fraser Institute, and I'm totally against the ranking. But there are ways that you can keep the FSAs as one of a number of assessments. I'm all against high stakes testing, and I think there is a problem with that. It's really good at predicting how big the houses are around the school, and that's the problem with it. When I talk about the corruption, it's the fact that they take it and they single out schools, and it's never meant for that. You're never, that kind of micro data that they're using is harmful, for lack of a better term. You can randomize, you can do all these things. All they basically need to do is change the way they release the data. They can do whole schools, parents can still get the information. What I'm concerned about, there are populations that value some of this, and FNESC is one of them that really takes the viewpoint or the opinion that these are useful metrics. And so it's kind of a little bit, it's one assessment in time, and that's all we need to think of. So if you'd be open to an amendment, I think if we randomize the results, or we can change those results, and the fact that, Sharon, hospitals don't have to do this. They don't, the Fraser Institute isn't allowed to rate and rank hospitals, any kind of accreditation or evaluation of hospitals. So the government has within their power the ability to hide those individual school scores, and that would be the difference. And so I don't think it's a bad motion. I think it's a motion that we might want to tweak a bit, and that would just be my one suggestion.
Go ahead, Suzanne Perot, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I will vote in favor of this motion because I think in order for the testing to change, it needs to be eliminated so new thought processes can be activated. The old system has some ableistic approaches within it, and it marginalizes and stigmatizes outside of the socioeconomic. It's also developmentally biased, and so I think we can approach it better. And sometimes when we eliminate things, it calls us into a new practice and a better practice and more inclusive practice. And that's really where we need to be moving within the whole system of education. And so with that, I'll be voting in favor of this.
I understand that Trustee Ward would like to say something. Go ahead, Trustee Ward, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I found this whole discussion very enlightening. Trustee Todd, what I want, through the chair to Trustee Todd, what I'd like to know is what would you suggest with respect to tweaking? Your commentary is very valuable. I understand what you're trying to have a nuanced perspective. I appreciate that. What would you suggest? Thank you.
Muted. Hi, I'm muted once again. I'm getting better at it. So through the chair, thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. You basically, you change what results. You can go to more of a macro release of results. What you don't allow for is individual schools. And you still have, parents can still find out information because some parents really do value FSA scores. But if you go to more of a macro level, you can still get some valuable because there is some useful parts to an FSA. I'm not defending the whole thing, I can't, but there are useful bits to it. and if you go at more of a macro level, you can randomize the tests, and you don't have at this school, because all that happens with that, and that's the problem, is when they pick on schools that are dealing with vulnerable populations, and then it's ranked. It's like hitting somebody over the head again and again and again. You need to stop that. And to stop that, it's the misuse of the information. It's the misuse of the assessment data that is causing the harm, the real harm out there to schools. And that's always been my concern, and it will continue. But at least if they can do some kind of randomizing or hide the results, do a data dump, but don't allow Frasers to take it and then use it against the system.
Okay, and on to Trustee Coburn. Your turn.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Yes, I do. I think measure is important. So with Trustee Todd, I do agree that we have to have some unit of measure, and we do. We can come at it from a whole bunch of different ways, and for some people that ranking is just, it's the language that they speak, and we shouldn't just vilify it because the Fraser Institute has taken something and perverted it beyond its original intention. However, I do think that the FSAs are just so dirty and tainted that I don't even know if we can tweak them any at all. I do think we should just maybe get rid of them and call it something else, like the equity outcome, and then maybe the Fraser Institute wouldn't be interested in it, because to Trustee Perot's point, which always was right on point with where I'm thinking, really what those FAS often do without any context is they're highlighting huge gaps in socioeconomic disparity, and they're highlighting the inequity that school PAC, even school PACs create inequity in outcome because you're reading parent and all this class capital. We're talking about class capital, and a word that we've talked about is intersectionality. And when you're looking at who is being impacted the most is, again, this point of intersectionality. So to me, void of context, all the FSAs are doing is preaching to the converted. Like, we already know that what goes into a child's educational output is parent. Because the ministry assumes that there's a certain level of parental involvement, which we know isn't always the case. So I think until we can change the narrative around what goes in to education, so not just this output, and I do understand that we need measures, I think that we probably should do away with it. So with that, I will happily support Trustee Wilson's motion.
Great, and my comments. And thank you very much. And team, my comment is I'm not going to support the motion as it stands because it's eliminating an assessment. And I think an assessment is a good assessment. It has been brutalized. It has been used abusively by the Fraser Institute, and that's where I have my problems. So I won't be supporting it. It's this issue of comparing schools to schools, and I think that's just comparison is wrong. If we compared trustees with each other, we'd have issues there too. And really that's what it comes down to. So I can't support the comparison. So when you go to the VSCSTA, if you would share somehow my take on it is that we should not be comparing schools via the Fraser Institute. I welcome some sort of an assessment, whether it's rebranded into a new format, that would be fine with me. So I leave it to you. So let's call the question and move on. All those in favor of the motion to BCSDA advocate to the Minister of Education to eliminate the Foundation Skills Assessment? And those opposed? Okay, Trustee Todd, Trustee Ward, I'm just not sure where you're standing on this.
Well, I don't know if there was a point of order or Trustee Todd was motioning or something.
Oh, is there? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Trustee Wilson was going to close on it. She had asked, she would like to comment at the end.
Yeah, I did want to comment. I appreciate all that the trustees have given as their input. I think it's very valuable. I think you've both brought up things. I just I think that all we hear from the presentations tonight and over is that we have to let students show what they know, and that they need to have access to showing that in different ways. And standardized tests do not allow for students to show that. We know that we have a range of students that learn in different ways, and they also show us what they know in different ways. And the standardized test is not for that. But I also just wanted to take this opportunity to remind trustees that this is not a motion for us to change anything right now. This is just asking that we bring this to the BCSTA AGM, where every trustee in the province, which I don't know, there's 45 school districts times, some of them have 7, some of them have 5. There's a lot of trustees that will all amend this or change this if it is to, you know, they see fit to. So all this is doing is asking to bring this there to where there will be a very fulsome discussion, I'm sure, with several more trustees than us. And all I'm asking is for you to pass this motion to make it to that floor where I think that it will have a bigger debate than we are even holding here. So that's all I'm asking with my wrap up.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Ross and David Todd. Thank you. And moving on to the second one. The second one you have is regarding your education assistance. Would you like to read that out in the rationale? Martha?
Yes. Okay, so this.
Just so you know, after this, we're going to have a motion for another 20 minutes, and then I think we'll have to close.
Okay, so the motion is, be it resolved that the BCSTA advocate to the Ministry of Education to prioritize establishing standards of practice for education assistance, and be it further resolved that education assistants be consulted and fully included along with other educational partner groups in the implementation and oversight of the standards. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded by Todd, go ahead.
Okay. The rationale. We must recognize the valuable role that education assistants play in our education system. Currently, there are no standards for education assistants, and programs that are offered throughout the province vary from 2 weeks to 2 years in length. This means EAs cannot possibly have the same learning outcomes and therefore have different levels of skill and ability. This directly impacts the children they are working with and leaves EAs vulnerable to injury. Students with disabilities are designated as a vulnerable population, and as such, we need to ensure there is a consistent standard of support among education assistants that support them. Although BCPC and QP submitted a joint submission with recommendations regarding EA standards to the Ministry of Education in the beginning of 2019, to date there has been no action taken. This issue has been raised by education assistants and their advocates for many years, and it is time that qualifications and requirements are established so that ongoing professional development and support can be determined, and education assistants and the districts they work for can feel confident in the level of professionalism being attained.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. We've heard your opening comments. Let's open it up for trustees' comments. Go ahead. Is there any comments? Trustee Todd, go ahead.
Right on, right on, right on.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, please? I appreciate your brief comments. All right, my only comment is it seems like standards is something that's very healthy, so I can't see why anyone would be against this one. Trustee Coburn, I think your hand was gently up there for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just say it's really long overdue and about time, and yeah, right on, good.
So I'm going to call the question on this, if I could. All those in favor of the motion that the BCSTA advocate the Minister of Education to prioritize establishing standards of practice for the education assistants. All those in favor, raise your hands. Thank you. It is passed unanimously. Thank you. So we're going to have to vote for another 20 minutes, and then we'll have to, that'll be the end of the meeting. I'm sorry we may not get to everything, but let's see what we do. For another, okay. I see I've moved it and it's seconded, and we're going to move for another 20 minutes. All right, very good. All right. The next one I have is from Trustee Perot, and it's called Inclusive Schools. Be it resolved that the BCST advocate to the Minister of Education to have all school districts evaluate and document for seclusion isolation rooms by the end of June 2021 for future eventual repurposing. That each school is include a biannual report to the strategic
oh my gosh,
to their board. Is this two motions?
They are two motions.
Okay, I'm sorry then. Let's just do the first one then. The first one I've already read out, and would you like to speak to it, please?
I will deliver the rationale. These are motions that our board has passed unanimously about a month ago, and that I want to see this move forward provincially and hopefully nationally after we're done there. So the rationale is...
I just need a seconder, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, David Todd is a seconder, thank you.
We need to see individual differences not as a problem to be fixed, but opportunities to learn from, which provide foundations for policies and procedures to move from. This provides us the best opportunity to combat any type of discriminatory behaviors, enabling the environment to be ready to teach in, to be safe in, and to learn in. Learning encompasses a variety of elements from the emotional, psychological, social, and physical. In our educational environments, children must be permitted to be able and enabled to learn. Furthermore, students of color or those who identify within the LGBTQA+ community become an increased statistic of the isms and become more vulnerable. Every student should have an equal right to quality education, including content, access, and process. That being said, as a board, we recognize it to be important to acknowledge and understand that number one, inclusion is a process. Number two, inclusion is focused on identifying and removing barriers. Number three, it's about all students being able to be present and participate, impacting both diversity and cultural witnessing, equity, and action. And finally, number four, it has a focal point on those who may present as marginalized or at risk for underachievement for a variety of reasons, including race, gender, and disability. We can and must do better, as our sergeant said earlier.
And thank you very much. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion for this? Would anyone else like to comment? Seems like a good one. All right, all those in favor of moving this forward to BCSTA? And it is unanimous. Thank you very much. And the last one is number 2. Would you like to read it out?
That each school is to include a biannual report to their board at Strategic and Education Committee on seclusion restoring incidences, as well as integrating information regarding any approved uses of such rooms.
Great, and do I have a seconder for that second motion, please? David Todd again, okay. And I guess your rationale is the same as the last one, so, okay. So any other comments from other trustees? David Todd, go ahead.
I just have a question to the mover. What you've detailed actually takes them to a specific committee, and I'm not sure every board in the province has the same committees that we have. So you might need to do some wordsmithing on the rationale there, because we send it to our Strat Education Committee, but not all boards in the province might have the same thing. So just something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I have seen no other discussion.
Trustee Colburn, I think, is trying to make a comment. No?
No? Okay. Thank you very much. Let's call the question on this then. And all those in favor of the motion? Take this to the BCSTA. Okay, great. Thanks. Boy, oh boy, unanimous as well. Now we're making time here. Wow, we're going to have, let's look at the clock. We still got time? Okay, we still.
I believe David Todd had a motion.
Yeah, I know, David. I just wonder if we were within the time. Okay, I had another motion. So it looks like we're going to be able to get to David's as well. Thank you very much. David, would you like me to read it out,
Sure.
or do you want to?
No,
okay.
You go ahead.
That the BCST urged the Ministry of Education to fully fund the costs associated with collective agreements, example, BCTF, QP, Teamsters, etc. Is there a seconder for this, please? Trustee Perot, thank you very much. And now for discussion. Any opening comments for you, Trustee Todd?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This motion is needed because as our school board worked through our preliminary budget for 20 21-22, we discovered approximately about 185,000. It's now down to about 183,000 on the cost due to the recently negotiated settlement with the VCTF. Governments of all stripes have imposed negotiated settlements at the provincial level, but left local school boards to make up the differences in the past. Every dollar spent here funding the settlements is less spent for educational services. Our education funding per student is already one of the lowest in Canada. If BCPC, our negotiating unit, negotiates a contract with approval from Treasury Board, we're asking that we pay the full cost. This is a matter of fundamental fairness and is covered by our co-governance agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Todd. I appreciate that. And now to open it up for discussion, I think we'll all be in favor of this, but see where it goes. Does anyone make a comment on this? I thank you for bringing this forward. It's something that's come forward in the past, and it's your comment of fairness. It's just, that's the foundation of it. So I have to agree with you on that one. All right, so all those in favor? Is there any opposed? No one's opposed. It's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. On to the balance of the meeting. And I'm sorry, folks, just getting organized. All right, we've done new business. Trustee comments. All right, Tobe, I guess we could have. Is there any trustee comments? Looking at the time, if we could really keep them short, I'd appreciate it. But if someone would like to make a trustee comment, this is your moment. David Ty, go ahead. I mean, Trustee Ward, go ahead. It's hard to get 4 chairs.
I'll keep it short, but I just think we had really excellent literacy presentations. Our staff always do a fabulous job, so we're in really good hands. So I just want to say thank you very much to staff at all levels. Thank you.
Very good. Go ahead, Trustee Todd. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was hoping to say something to the literacy because that's really in my wheel well. Reading is the core of the education apple. It really is. And I'm over the moon excited about literacy. I think when you be intentional, that's what learning's all about. It's all about literacy. And I was so encouraged tonight to hear the talk of a K-12 instruction of literacy, because that's so critical. There was a time when we said, oh, we blame the guys further upstream. And now we talk about literacy as a process, right from kindergarten to grade 12. And it's just absolutely amazing. And I appreciate our staff. I know we have fantastic staff and our DLT. And I also tonight, I want to say thank you to our fellow trustees. And we know soon, or well, within the next month, we'll have another once again. But I want to thank and appreciate my fellow trustees for the work, and some of us, did a little bit of work recently to get, motions for BCSTA. I really appreciate the working level of all of you. Thank you.
Personal highlight for me tonight was the very first presentation by the Youth Engagement Initiative, and I really appreciated Aya Hayer's comments. I found them quite inspirational. I think we're really fortunate to have these kind of people in our district. All right, I'm just going to move to question period. If I missed anybody, sorry, no, go ahead. There's a few people that like to comment. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Marnie Wilson. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I also want to thank the presenters tonight. I think they did an amazing job. I'm excited about everything they had to say, so that was great. I would like to recognize Martin Luther King Day and acknowledge the first annual Black Shirt Day and thank our school communities that participated. I also just want to take a moment and talk about the upcoming by-election. We have 7 candidates running for a spot on this great school board. In general, by-elections have a very low voter turnout, and trustee by-elections have even the lowest turnout. So I just want to ask all eligible voters in the Langley Township to take time to vote in this election. Education is important. It is the foundation of our society, and the young people who are in school today will be our future leaders. I often hear of people talking about school trustee as a place to start your political career, to gain name recognition before moving into other branches of politics. To me, that is insulting because I know there is important work to be done in this position, and I truly hope that whomever the successful candidate is will value this work. Thank you all and good night.
And thank you, Trustee Wilson. You're right. We already have the highest office. How could someone go higher than us, I think. So your comments are well taken. Thank you. Go ahead. Let's hear from Trustee Shelley Coburn. Thank you.
Trustee Wilson, you kill me in a good way. Okay, I'll do my best to keep it brief. I had something prepared. I've edited most of it out. So I'll speak slowly though. First and foremost and always, thank you to each and every one of you who continues to go to work to make public education happen each and every single day. Your dedication to what you do, to children and to families in a time of tremendous uncertainty, is keeping our young people as safe, happy, and healthy as is possible during a global pandemic. I want to reiterate that government needs to reevaluate who is considered essential. My position is and has always been and will continue to be that we need to be protecting our front line, and to me there is nothing more essential than keeping the public education system going, because without it there is no way we can keep the big S system going. How this is not evident, it's beyond me. And now, last but not least, and although it may not seem pressing, to me it is, and to everyone actually, because the health of a board is reflected in the overall health of a district. You may have heard we are having a by-election. Congratulations to all of you who have put your names forward. You are now officially candidates, and one of you in just a few short weeks will become a trustee, joining the 6 of us wonderful people at this table. For anybody who has been watching, and I'm assuming all you candidates have been, it is no secret that this has been a tough term for this board. Never mind our interpersonal conflicts, there's a whole pandemic thing and everything else we manage as trustees. I want to be upfront about what I am looking for in a candidate. Someone who is coming for the right reasons. It is said often, but it is extra crucial at this time. This board cannot take an ego, an agenda, or a divisive nature. This board is beginning to heal and come together and function and get to the business of a board. What matters the most to me is that whoever wins will not be seeking to divide an already fragile board. I want the person who is running to be running for the right reasons to win. The candidate with no other agenda than to serve. Because at the end of the day, winning an election means you have won the privilege of serving. I want the candidate that can humble themselves to this place. The only agenda that a candidate should be bringing to this table is an agenda that seeks to contribute and collaborate and move this board forward, and not to pour gasoline on a fire that just recently went out. And with this, I will say good luck to all of you in this race. And I look forward to serving with whoever manages to win a by-election with 7 candidates vying for one spot on a struggling board during a global pandemic. And again, I say thank you to all of those who serve and continue to serve, and have a great evening and continue to stay safe and take care. Thanks.
Thank you very much, trustees. And I've got question period next, so on to question period. Oh, I see. What? David, talk what?
Trustee Perot?
Trustee Perot would maybe like to have some comments, yes. Chair Ross, if that's okay.
You can do it, Trustee Ross.
Sorry.
I believe in you. We can do it. I will be very brief. I first want to really loudly echo Trustee Wilson and Trustee Colburn's comments and statements and thoughts and heart towards our new candidate that's going to be coming in, taking in that last square that's on my screen that's just showing empty. I'm excited to meet you and work with you. I'm excited to see where our board is going to go as a team and what we're going to do together, operating as a collective team as one for our students and our staff to serve them. And that's my heart. And so I look forward to meeting you and having you come here with open hands and an open heart. I want to thank our leaders tonight who presented to us. I'm excited for tomorrow. I'm going to LSS along with Trustee Wilson, I believe, to do capstones, and that's always such an incredible privilege. And I want to thank our leadership team for the tireless work that they've been doing and leading us and making the big decisions behind the scenes that keep them up at night and then bring the answers to us. And so I thank you guys for that. And I also thank you to our families who are out there supporting us, to support you, to support all these wonderful babies that are in our schools. So bless you guys and have a good night.
Thank you, Trustee Perot. And to the entire board, thank you for being gracious with me. I'm still a rookie at this in some ways. I haven't quite graduated. I've been doing this for 28 years and I still haven't got it figured out. But anyway, question period. Due to the fact that the public will be using an online platform for this regular board meeting, the process for question period is as follows. The board will be not taking questions from members of the public in real time. We encourage members of the public to please submit their questions by emailing feedback@sd35.bc.ca. Questions will be accepted for up to 1 hour after the adjournment of the meeting. Board members or the appropriate staff will respond to the individual directly to acknowledge they've received the email within 24 hours. Therefore, a response will be provided to the individual thereafter, pardon me. The purpose is to ensure that those present in the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during the meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before considering further questions from any individual. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at a public meeting that is in keeping with the goal of a respectful and focused meeting. Questions should, 1, need to be directed to the chair, not to staff. 2, need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda. Need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement. 4, may not be asked that are related to the personnel or directed to an individual trustee. 5, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations. And lastly, the questioner shall provide their names so that they can be reached, it can be reflected in the minutes. So with that, I'd like to adjourn tonight's very good meeting. And first off, we're going to have Trustee Shelley Coburn, moved by Trustee Wilson. All those in favor? I see that, Ann. Thank you very much. Bless you all. Have a wonderful good night. Thank you.
Good night.